Controversial here, and that might be a function of my age. I think the last 3 years have shown us very clearly that lots of these tools, and in some ways, I think some of them are buzzwords. I think if you look at blockchain, for example, I don't think many people understand what blockchain does and how it works. For me, if you wanted to effectively have managed what's happened, and some things you could have predicted, some things you maybe couldn't have predicted. But I think if you'd understand a bit more about history, you would have been much better prepared for what's happened in Central and Eastern Europe in the last 15 months than anything that any predictive analytics could have showed you. And I think this is, for me, the concern is that procurement, and I think many organizations, many functions beyond procurement are now too reliant on data and too reliant on how they perceive data to be the answer to everything. And I think we've forgotten to do some of the basics in procurement as a result of that. My view of, so the technology landscape, the analytics landscape, the data landscape is, there are too many choices. So whether you're looking at P2P or S2C or sustainability, scope 3 emissions tracking, and so on and so on and so on. If you look at that landscape, you could probably identify 100 providers, probably more actually, across those various pillars of where procurement would want to operate, would want to drive analytics, would want to have its finger on the pulse. For me, the role of procurement is not simply to have those systems. It's to help the business to drive the insights about what systems I should be using. And I think that's something I don't see procurement doing enough of. So I think procurement needs to be a digital navigator, and you need the right skill set and the right people to do that. And I don't see many organizations really knocking that out of the park, if I'm being honest. So I think that's knowing what to harness and why. I think is the ticket to success. I think that's where procurement should focus its attention. A bit like trying to manage any supply relationship, the market research, the market understanding, the insights, the knowledge. So there's a great quote from Lenin, right? And Lenin said that there are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen. And I think that's exactly what we've seen over the last 3 years. You've had COVID, you've had conflict. So all those things have happened before. I'm old enough, grey hair. I'm old enough to have lived through wars before. I've lived through pandemics before. I've lived through multiple examples of global supply disruption, but they never all come at once. And I think that's what's happened in the last 3 years. The challenge that everyone's faced, and I think has actually been found out on, is that since 2008 and the financial crisis, everyone got complacent. Inflation didn't exist. Everything was quite smooth. There were no major macro issues. And basically nobody was ready. They might have talked about it. They might have said, yes, this could happen, but it's all jam tomorrow. So nobody was ready for this. And then when it hits and keeps hitting, procurement's traditional game doesn't work anymore. And procurement, you can look at it two ways. Either this is the best ever opportunity you've had in your life to drive procurement to a very, very different place, or you play the game you always played, and that game doesn't work anymore. So procurement continue to talk about savings. Well, I'm sorry, that's not actually in many cases what the business needs to deliver. The business needs you to protect revenue, ideally grow revenue, but to protect revenue, to protect supply chains. It's about resiliency. It's about security. So the traditional levers in procurement don't work anymore. Volume consolidation, globalization's dead, right? It's about onshoring, nearshoring. It's not about low-cost sourcing. It's not about global answers. That's all history. we have a new world, and procurement's ability to step up and manage that is the challenge. And the traditional levers aren't going to do that. So that for me is the big learning, and can procurement seize the day to do that? And I think that's the next question. Some organizations are doing it, most are not, and I think most procurement organizations are still trying to work out how can I continue to play the same game when actually that game is no longer viable. I want to learn. I want to be wowed by new ideas. Now that isn't necessarily easy, having been in procurement for 40 years, but I go there with an open mind, and I go there with a willingness and desire to learn. And I think that's very important, whether you're starting your career or in the twilight of your career, as probably I am, but I still want to learn. And I think that's the first point. Networking is clearly obviously part of that. So having a conference the size of ProcureCon Asia, with the amount of people that are going to be there, the breadth of industry, the breadth of different types of people, different types of roles, is obviously invaluable to do that. And also it's a chance for me to build the MISC brand. So, which again is very important. Like everybody, you have to attract people to your business.